So we like to, Barrett and I always like to start with the prayer on page 28 in the text of the Course in Miracles. And it's a beautiful little prayer that I try to keep in mind whenever I seemingly am going into something that's going to be difficult. So, you ready?
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could do much on behalf of your own healing and that of others if, in a situation calling for help, you think of it this way. I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal.
All right. Yeah. So as always, this prayer really absolves us, right? So Charlie and I don't have to worry about what we are going to say or what we're going to do, because
not your fault.
You're always that's right. It's our way of deflecting blame, really. Is what
Don't point no fingers at me.
But for this good news, Charlie and I picked the theme, the happy learner, because we're going to be diving into this idea and sharing about it. As always, we like to reference the chart that's behind Charlie on the screen there. That chart is from the Foundation for A Course in Miracles and courtesy of Ken Wapnick and his team. It's a beautiful demonstration of the metaphysics of the Course, and it's really sort of like a map of the mind and our descent into our current experience and how we get back to the truth of what we are. So, a lot of times as we're going through life, we sometimes wish we had a map, right? So that helps us to know where we're going. And without a map, we might feel kind of lost. And so this map actually is really useful in that way because it helps us to get unlost.
A roadmap to get unlost. Yeah, and so it's something that I reference a lot just with people when I'm talking to them, but I also reference it a lot just in my own thinking. And so when I find myself seemingly battling with the ego in some way, shape, or form, I picture that chart in my mind, and I recognize that what is really going on is when I'm in some kind of confusion of any sort that I've really chosen that left side of that chart. I'm just buying into that belief system over there, and I know that there's another side to that chart that says, oh wait, the Holy Spirit's got you. You just got to make that choice. So I'm sure we'll reference it a lot today as we go on, and like Barret touched on, our thing we wanted to talk about today is this idea of the happy learner, and from my own experience of working with the Course. I have found that this really is a happy learning. It's a happy experience. It's a joyful, recognition in my life that things can be different than they've been, that I can see things differently. All I really need to do is make that choice to work with Holy Spirit, and I can let go of this whole ego side of things. And I just wanted to start it off with, because there's an actual section in chapter 14, and chapter 14 is called Teaching for Truth. And the section 2 is the happy learner. And it starts out with the Holy Spirit needs a happy learner in whom his mission can be happily accomplished. You, who are steadfastly devoted to misery, must first recognize that you are miserable and not happy. The Holy Spirit cannot teach without this contrast, for you believe that misery is happiness. And this has so confused you that you have undertaken to learn to do what you could never do, believing that unless you learn it, you will not be happy. So we can go right to the chart and talk about it. And really what he's saying is that when we buy the decision maker, the you that I just emphasized there, is this decision maker. And when you decide, the Son of God decides that he's going to do things on his own, he's going to plan everything, he's going to fix everything, he's going to control everything, manage everything. This is the misery that Jesus is talking about. That's what we're going to get out of this. Now, there might be moments of, random happiness and random joy in this illusion, But for the most part, we can see how confusing it is. How, somebody's got to be wrong in most of our stories, and somebody, has got to take the blame. We were just joking about taking the blame, right? But there is this quote that we actually put on our flyer for today. The fundamental teaching that truth is true. This is the hardest lesson you will ever learn, and in the end, the only one. Simplicity is very difficult for twisted minds. Consider all the distortions you have made of nothing. And so once again, Jesus is pointing out that this thought system, this belief system is meaningless. It doesn't exist. It's not real. We keep putting all our faith in it and trying to work within it and trying to fix the world so it fits into this, crazy thought pattern. And he's telling us right at the very beginning of this, you can't do that, But we have a choice. We can see it a different way. And this is the road to being that happy learner, is choosing that over and over again and starting to recognize that even though this seeming illusion is still filled with insanity, and I see it all the time, or we see it all the time in our individual lives, we can still be in a joyous place and not be in judgment and criticism and fear, right? And guilt and blame and sin, that is what typically goes along with this insane thinking.
Yeah. And really seeing this, what happens is we realize we've been looking at everything completely upside down. We've been valuing what is valueless and not valuing what is really truly valuable. And so this is really a process of unlearning and relearning, right? Unlearning the ego's story that something here in this world is our salvation, which includes things like even our relationships with other people that we often are called special relationships in the Course, and coming to see that really it's our oneness with God that is the core answer to all of our issues, all of our suffering, and that's how we can shift into what the Course calls the holy relationship. So there's a quote about this that I wanted to mention here. It's a little further on in chapter 15, section 5. He says, "To believe that special relationships with special love can offer you salvation is the belief that separation is salvation, for it is the complete equality of the atonement in which salvation lies. How can you decide that special aspects of the sonship can give you more than others? The past has taught you this, yet the holy instant teaches you it is not so." So what's Jesus saying here? Well, he's really pointing us out that how we have this hierarchy, right? This hierarchy of illusions. Some are more important than others. Some are less important. Some lead us into more happiness. Some lead us into fear. Right? On the level of the world, this is certainly how things work. But what Jesus is leading us to see is that we don't have to be beholden to that way of thinking. We can actually step out of that into the truth, which is that our happiness lies in our connection with God, which is eternal. And fear ultimately has no basis in what is true, and therefore it doesn't really have any reality. Now, again, this is radical stuff in the world's thinking, and the ego hates it, right? The ego will throw all kinds of different ways at us to try to get us to forget this or be distracted by it, or just maybe disbelieve it, say, no, that's impossible. I can't really do that, or no one could do that. But what we see more and more as we practice it is that it really is all-encompassing. It really does, work in every situation. And it turns all of our special relationships, which is, again, some connection with a person, even a thing that we think somehow is going to make us happy. It turns those special relationships into holy encounters, which are opportunities to know that the pure happiness already resides within us. And again, that leads us back to the state of being the happy learner.
So our first freight train is going by. I hope it's not too disruptive. It's what? It's meditative. So I just wanted to touch for a second on, Jesus in the text, he starts out in the beginning of the text pointing out how we think, how we see things, how we recognize things, everything from this belief system of the ego. And early on excuse me a second, I want to get the right page. In chapter 4, the illusions of the ego, he tells us, I am teaching you to associate misery with the ego and joy with the spirit. You have taught yourself the opposite. You are still free to choose, but can you really want the rewards of the ego in the presence of the rewards of God? My trust in you is greater than yours in me at the moment, but it will not always be that way. Your mission is very simple. You are asked to live so as to demonstrate that you are not an ego, and I do not choose God's channels wrongly. And so this concept, getting back to this concept of the happy learner, he's telling us right now, recognize this difference. Recognize that the confusion that I mentioned earlier, the living in sin, guilt, and fear, that is the bailiwick of the ego. And that's all we're ever going to get out of that, right? But there is another way to see things. And he's telling us, put your trust in me. I am teaching you to associate misery with the ego and joy with the spirit. So we have that choice in everything that's going on in our lives to see it from one of those two positions. My default my whole life was to choose the ego. I didn't know I had another choice. I didn't really realize that. And it's not that I didn't, and maybe we had a great expression in the 12-step program about foxhole prayer, right? Yeah, it's when, the foxhole prayers would, when you got your head down, the bullets are flying back and forth, and all you're saying is, God, whatever, I will do anything. Get me out of this mess, right? Yeah, that's the foxhole prayer. So, there was always some of that in my life. But actually, there was a lot of it in my life. But I was a lot of foxholes. But anyway, the truth is that I don't have to ever get in the foxhole. I don't have to have the bullets flying. I can be, as Jesus talks about, be the observer of it. Be aware that you've made that choice, that you're heading in that direction. And once you start to see that, there is a difference, why wouldn't you do as he said? Why would you pick this confusion, the bullets flying, over the peace and joy that you can experience when you're walking with me, when you're hanging out with me? And he tells us, another line is here. Let me get this one too. Sorry. While I get through this. Lost it. Anyway, there was a section in here that basically he was saying, you don't really trust me yet. You don't know to trust me yet. But this is the journey that the happy learner is starting on. He's got to start with that trust and understanding that if I do choose Holy Spirit, I do choose Jesus to work with, Holy Spirit to work with, I'm going to start to perceive things differently. I'm going to have a different vision of what's going on in front of me rather than the one I've defaulted to all my life. And that's the blessing in all this. That is the beginning of being this happy learner. Because we recognize that I'm going to be in misery if I choose this other way. And I'm not going to be in misery if I go with Holy Spirit. And we start to experience that. So the trust turns into an experience, right? The choosing the other teacher starts to become an experience that we can vouch to, right? It works. This is changing the way I see things. And over time, it just keeps getting more and more light shown on it. More and more of an awakening is taking place. Less and less judgment is taking place. Less and less fear. It's a much sweeter place to recognize fear is coming along, that I'm about to choose that. And I know where that's going to go. I know where it's going to lead me, right? If I go with the ego. Or I can take that fear, turn it over to Holy Spirit, and look at it from a different perspective. And the fear can leave. Just as simply as I chose to have it there, it can leave. Just as simply.
Yeah. And again, that's the simple but not always easy, right?
Yeah.
As we're up against some of the challenging things in our life, we might not feel like we can go there. We might not feel like we can really choose the peace. But again, it always is a choice, and but we don't need to be hard on ourselves if in that moment we're not being able to choose it. We're not being able to quite reach that peace within. And this world throws us some tough things. So both Charlie and I heard this morning that Jim Fogarty, longtime course student in this group in Glenview, Jim passed away last night. And he was luckily surrounded by loved ones. Mickey was there, all of his kids were there, and some grandkids, and she even shared that they all prayed together, and that there was a real beautiful feeling. So when we face things like this, again, it's not always easy to feel the peace, but even in the face of things like this, we can. And again, when I was able to talk with Mickey a little bit this morning, and she expressed a lot of the love that she'd felt, and even some of the really beautiful, happy things. Like, I didn't realize that they'd gotten married on Halloween, so it was just their wedding anniversary a few days ago. And one of the last things Jim did, he was calling Mickey and he asked her for the credit card number. So she gave him the credit card number, and what did he do? Well, he bought her flowers for their anniversary. So just really, really sweet things. And again, even in the face of tough things, we can always be choosing love. And to me, that's a real demonstration of that ability that we have. And just a message to all of us that this is a choice we want to keep making. So, and Mickey did just want everyone in this group to know that she has always appreciated the group, and it means a lot to her, the whole Course in Miracles community. So I just wanted to pass that on to everyone as well.
Thank you. Yeah, there's getting back to this section on the happy learner. There's a phrase in here that he keeps repeating, and I just want to touch on it for a moment. And again, if you, as I'm reading this, if you think of Ken's chart, you think of what he's talking about is heaven, truth, right, reality, versus everything else that is below this line, that is stuff that the Son of God has made up. That we are somehow separate from our reality. We're separate from truth. We're separate from God. And this is the actual quote. I misspoke before, but this is the quote we had on the flyer. The truth is true. Nothing else matters. Nothing else is real. And everything beside it is not there. So there's heaven and there's nothing else. That's a really hard, as you were saying earlier, Barret, it's a simple idea, but really hard to accept because we are so used to believing that we are something other than in heaven. And let me make the one distinction for you that you cannot make, but need to learn. Your faith in nothing is deceiving you. Our faith in nothing is this faith we have in this belief system that is somehow, we think, outside of heaven. It's separate from heaven. Your faith in nothing is deceiving you. Offer your faith to me, and I will place it gently in the holy place where it belongs. You will find no deception there, but only the simple truth, and you will love it because you will understand it. So again, he's really being quite clear to us, that heaven is real, and everything else is not. It is meaningless. It doesn't exist. Again, we put all our faith in it, but it's not true. So the phrase that I wanted to touch on is the truth is true. And he uses it throughout the next several paragraphs. He says, when you teach anyone that truth is true, you learn it with him. So here we go, talking about the happy learner. Right? When we share what we're learning, when we share what we're understanding, we share the clarity, and we can do this. It doesn't need to be verbal, right? It can just be in the way we exist in this walking around in our shoes, right? We don't need to have any other thing going on. Have you experienced where you're recognizing the presence of Holy Spirit, you're in touch with that, and you're just kind of smiling, right? You just kind of have this little grin on your face. And notice if people don't react to that. They'll catch your eye and smile at you, and it's simply because you're centered, you're in that spot, And so you don't need to say anything at all. You can just be in that existence, be in that awareness, and it has an impact. So again, when you teach anyone that truth is true, you learn it with them, and so you learn that what seemed hardest was the easiest. Learn to be a happy learner, he tells us, right? And then down below, he's got, if you would be a happy learner, you must give everything, everything you have learned to the Holy Spirit to be unlearned for you. Everything we've taught ourselves over on, again, if I'm thinking of this when I'm reading this, I'm thinking of this chart. Everything going on in my belief system on the left-hand side of Ken's picture here, I recognize that I need to take all of that to Holy Spirit. Anytime I buy into something over that sin, guilt, and fear area, I need to take that to Holy Spirit. If you would be a happy learner, you must give everything you have learned to the Holy Spirit to be unlearned for you. And then begin to learn the joyous lessons that come quickly on the firm foundation that truth is true. There it is again. That's all there is. Truth is true. There is nothing else. And then down below, the happy learner meets the conditions of learning here, as he meets the conditions of knowledge in the kingdom. Conditions of learning here are the circumstances that we keep creating, right? I'm learning from these. Every time I tell myself a story, and I've got a story of duality, a story of separation going on, I can learn from that story, right? And I can learn happily. I don't need to bring guilt into the picture and say, God, look what I've done. I chose this. I chose the ego story, and then I start to beat myself up about it. The happy learner doesn't do that. The happy learner is going to go, as I often say to myself, Charlie, you're such a whack job. And laugh about it, really, because it's so crazy. I mean, he's telling us over and over, you think insanely. Here's proof of it. You're going to choose misery. For truth is true. What else could ever be or ever was? Right? The simple lesson holds the key to the dark door that you believe is locked forever. You made this door of nothing, and behind it is nothing. Again, think of the chart. That whole left side of the chart is just a belief system we created in our mind, this wrong-minded thinking, as Jesus refers to it as, and we continually just buy into that over and over and over again. And yet we start to learn on this path of the happy learner that we don't have to do that. And it does put a smile on your face. Like, oh yeah, why not? Why not choose feeling better? Why not choose the peace and the joy instead of this misery that I want to head to?
Yeah, and when we do choose the peace and the joy, obviously the benefit is the peace and the joy, right? So in a way, it sort of asks a big question, and the big question is like, why would we keep choosing the ego, right? And as we start to get these concepts, it's a really good question, and the answer is that we are addicted to the ego. We have a major ego addiction. Hi, my name is Barret. I'm an egoaholic. Hi, Barret. And most, if we are all honest, we can all say that too, right? We choose the ego because why? It reinforces our belief in individuality. So as long as we believe we are an individual, as long as the individual self seems to be us, then the ego is alive, right? The ego is kicking. The ego is still being given power. But now again and again, we're getting better at saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I've been down that road. I've made that decision again and again and again. And every time I choose it, what do I get? I get some form of suffering. And as Charlie said before, really, Jesus is really trying to link our suffering to the choices we make in our mind. He's trying to help us to see that the suffering is a result of our believing in the ego thought system. And that's really all it is, again and again and again. And so what's happening is we're breaking the link, right? We're breaking it apart. We're realizing, I don't want to keep choosing this. I don't want to keep magnetically being pulled to the ego. Now we can still be gentle with ourselves when we do make these choices, but we can get more and more. We can actually really get a sense of like desire and a deep dedication to, choosing the right mind, saying, this is not working for me. I've tried it again and again. I've tried it different ways. Every time I end up falling flat on my face. And I just don't want to keep doing that anymore. And again, this idea is very evocative of that that speech that Bill made to Helen. That they were getting ready for something at work, and Bill was just really tired of all the backbiting and all the issues going on in their department. And he made this big speech about how something had to change, and concluding with a line, "There's got to be another way. There has to be another way." And Helen, somewhat unexpectedly, agreed with him and said to Bill, "You're right, and I'm going to help you find this way." And lo and behold, that was the energy, that was the decision, that joining, that's putting aside of separate interests and uniting in a common purpose, is the genesis of the Course. And the message of the Course just repeats this again and again and again in so many different ways. Each time we hear it, it comes in a little bit more. Each time we get it, it sinks in a little bit deeper. And just know that this repeating of these ideas is actually crucial to really absorbing. It's not bad if you've heard something a dozen times and then you feel like it finally clicks. It's just how it unfolds, right? We resist, and all of a sudden something in us is ready for that deeper state of being. Something in us is really like, okay, this is the time. This is the time I'm going to absorb this and really get this in a bigger, deeper way. And anyone who's worked with this for a while knows that this experience happens again and again and again in different ways. How many times have we picked up the Course and read a line we know our eyes have at least looked at, several times, dozens of times. And this time, all of a sudden, it just hits us in this really profound way, this really kind of mind-blowing way. So, and as people often say, you're just getting it on a deeper level. So this actually reminds me of something I remember, Gary Renard, obviously one of my favorite Course teachers. He also likes to tell jokes during his presentations. So, I feel like I'm carrying on his lineage in a way. But one of his participants was at a workshop, and during a break, they were talking, and he said to Gary, "Gary, it's strange. I've heard you talk so many times that I even have heard a number of your jokes before, but they're still really funny to me." And Gary kind of, paused a little bit, and he said, "That's because you're getting them on a deeper level." But of course, that's the perfect intro to a couple jokes for you guys today. So, we're starting to head into the holiday season. It kind of got me to think a little bit about some holidays. And I thought, why is there so much pressure to spend Independence Day with other people? All right. So, I had some sad news. Maybe not everyone knew that I had this job, but I lost my job as a stage designer. I was really upset, but I left without making a scene. All right. Well, we'll see if the third time's a charm. So one time when I was in school, something really weird happened. I saw my math teacher very carefully take a piece of graph paper and then lock himself in his office. It seemed to me that he was plotting something.
Yeah.
But maybe not. He always had a lot of problems.
You like your jokes, Barret.
I do.
Is that the segue?
I love him more than anyone.
A lot of problems.
I've got a lot of problems.
It's interesting, Barret. This morning when I was getting ready, that happened to me. I read a little section this morning, just a 4-sentence paragraph this morning that, again, I probably read 100 times, and it jumped off the page at me with one of those aha moments, and this is it. And I just touched on this a second ago. The happy learner cannot feel guilty about learning. This is so essential to learning that it should never be forgotten. The guiltless learner learns easily because his thoughts are free. Yet this entails the recognition that guilt is interference, not salvation, and serves no useful function at all. So there is that understanding and that clarity. If we take that, what he's saying is so important to never forget that when we find ourselves having chosen to be with the ego, we simply let that go. We don't carry into choosing to go with Holy Spirit the story that we chose it, that we chose the ego. We can just let it go. There's no guilt associated with it, right? I made a choice. And, Jesus talks about the difference between sin and error. Ego wants us to think we've sinned. Holy Spirit wants us to understand all we did was make an error. We just chose ego's thought system over the Holy Spirit's clarity and vision. And that's all we did. It's not a sin. There's nothing to be guilty about, right? So we don't want to carry that, this understanding that I chose to be with the ego into my clarity with the Holy Spirit. Kind of going, Holy Spirit, help me. Look what I've done. I really screwed up, type of thing. So we want to understand it's so important, and he's telling us here, right here in this paragraph, right? The guiltless learner learns easily because his thoughts are free, right? When I'm with Holy Spirit, my thoughts are totally free. If this entails a recognition, guilt is interference, not salvation. It serves no useful function at all. So there it is. We can. My thoughts are free with Holy Spirit, right? I'm not tied to any outcome. I'm not tied to fixing, controlling, or managing anything. I'm absolutely free. I'm free of this decision that says I'm somehow guilty and I got to pay for it. Somehow guilty, I've got to fix it. Somehow guilty, I've got to do something else, right? That ties my thoughts up in that ego thought system. But in the right-minded thinking, I can recognize that I just let this go. My thoughts are totally free. I don't have to be trapped in this world of I have sinned, I am guilty, I'm going to be punished, right? Which is the original story the Son of God told himself when he decided that he was going to be separate from his Father. And he had this tiny mad idea, right? I've sinned against my Father, I'm guilty of that, right? Now I'm going to get punished. That was the dilemma the hole that we dug for ourselves. And we've taken all our thoughts ever since then in this ego thought system and somehow laid that format out, laid that plan, right? Either I've sinned or most likely you've sinned, you've sinned, you're guilty, and you're going to get punished. That's the way I think of all most of my circumstances that come up. And if they haven't sinned, I've done it, right?
Does that free us also from things we may have done in the past in terms of guilt?
Yeah, because there is no past to really be carrying with us. So whether I'm recognizing it in the moment, I'm still thinking about the past, right? So whether it's the past like a second ago or the past several lifetimes ago, it's all the same thing, right? So if I think I sinned back in 7th grade, right, or I've sinned, right, in the last breath, it's the same thing. It's all what? It's all part of this thought system over on the left side of the chart, right? And what is the thought system on the left side of the chart? But meaningless, it is nothing, it doesn't exist, right? So that's what we want to recognize. Again, the happy learner starts to understand, all I did was make a choice. I chose to believe that I'm separate from my Father. I chose to believe that my brother and I are separate. I chose to believe that, truth is not true, right? This doesn't exist. That's what I've chosen. And all of those are simply thoughts. They are just wrong-minded thinking going on.
Does this allow us to keep screwing up in the future?
Well, in a sense, what we're really saying is that there is no future. I'm really making this decision here and now, right in the present, right in this present moment. With this breath, I'm recognizing I have a choice. And I have a choice with every moment coming forward. Yes, because I think I'm here. I think I'm living in this existence. But do I want to choose the other great line that I'm going to bring up in a second. Do I want to choose the crucifixion, or do I want to choose peace and joy? You know, so that's my choice. It's constantly going on for me, right? So whether I live another 10 years in this illusion, right, and continue to choose illusionary thoughts, that's going to happen. But what I have to do, what I don't have to do, is be guilty about it, right? Even when they pop up, I don't have to be guilty about it, right? So if we think for a moment of our special relationships, this is one of the great areas I always go to, because this is where I find so much of my guilt projection is in my special relationships, right? I spent some time yesterday. I was telling Barret earlier. I spent some time with one of my best friends yesterday, who was not a course student, and somebody that I would love to be a course student, but he doesn't want to be involved. So when he first rejected my bringing the course to him, and he rejected it, I was deeply hurt. It's like, what? Yeah, you're like, why wouldn't you?
Not love this?
How can you not love this, number one? But how can you not love something I'm bringing to you? You know, so my ego was so involved in it. You know, that's why I was hurt. And, you know, after a period of time of going back and forth with it, just because the ego would jump in there, and I'd forgive him and forgive me, I finally got to that place where I recognized it doesn't matter. And you know what I really found is that when we do get together and we start conversing, we're on the same path anyway. Exactly the same stuff is going on in his life that's going on in my life. And he's seeing things from a perspective that's really from the Holy Spirit. You know, he doesn't use the same terminology and phrases and everything that I do, but he's on a spiritual path. And who am I to say anything about his spiritual path? It doesn't mean it's, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean anything. So devout Catholic, you know, it doesn't make a difference. Jesus tells us right in the very beginning of the course, this is one of 1,000 ways to get home. You know? And so I don't need to be projecting guilt onto somebody else about their choices, and I certainly don't need to project guilt on myself when I make a choice to go over here to think with the ego. I don't need to do it. It's unnecessary. And it's only going to get me what? It's going to get me stuck over here. Choose the crucifixion over joy and peace, right? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's such a good example, right? Because again, it's so easy to find these ways that we just see something a little bit wrong in someone else or a little bit off, and the ego then just kind of takes it and runs with it, right? The ego is always on the lookout for these sorts of things. In fact, in one section, Jesus talks about these sort of like being the hungry dogs of fear that we send out to find the guilt and bring it back to us, and they always find something, right? These dogs are always projecting the guilt and finding someone to blame. But the good news is that the Holy Spirit has messengers too, and the Holy Spirit's messengers only see innocence everywhere. So no matter where we send them, they see innocence in everything. And that's the attitude that we're going to come more and more into, and we are coming into as we practice this course. We can see things that previously had been really upsetting, just with lightness and with love. As Charlie said, you know, everyone is on the path back to oneness, even if they have no concept about spirituality, right? Because everyone has the same in that everyone has the right mind within themselves. Everyone has a wrong mind, and everyone can choose one or the other, and everyone is choosing one or the other in every moment. So, you know, if we ever feel ourselves getting on some sort of high horse, then it's really helpful to see that and to really recognize there's no significant difference between us and anyone else. You know, just like the ego can make us feel bad and inferior, the ego also loves us to feel superior, and spiritual superiority is a really subtle one, but it creeps in there, and it's really helpful to see that that's a thing that can happen, so that we can sort of nip it in the bud a little bit quicker and not go down that road. I mean, I can really relate to Charlie. I did a version of that with Edith when she and I first got together, where I was like, oh yeah, she's spiritual, but she's not into the course. But you know, she'll get what's really a good spirituality eventually. But you know, I mean, I had little subtle things I was doing and subtle beliefs, and they were obviously coming to the foreground. And I was like, this is not my job. It's not my job to tell someone else what they should believe or what's better to believe or not. Even as I'm standing here talking about the Course in front of you, it's okay for everyone to choose whatever works for them. And I think that's really important, because really what it's doing is it's emphasizing the idea of choice, right? And what Jesus says about choice is that our ability to choose is our one remaining power in this world, right? And that's pretty amazing statement, right? Our one remaining power. We think we have all these powers in the world, right? We have the power to build this or to destroy that, or to create relationships or to end relationships. All these seeming powers, but really what he's saying is all of that is a whole bunch of meaninglessness, right? As Charlie said before, this world is ultimately meaningless except for the meaning that we project onto it. And what we want to keep doing again and again is pulling back the meaning that we've given to it, so that its right-minded meaning can be seen. And that right-minded purpose is always to realize this is not the truth, and I want to know what really is. Now, of course, as that happens, the paradox is we find ourselves being more engaged and more loving and more kind with everyone in our lives. We don't feel like we need to defend against anything, because we know that we are perfectly safe within ourselves. So again, this is a journey to get into this experience, but this is why we're doing it, and this is why it really does make a difference. So I wanted to share a quote from chapter 26, which really connects into what we've been talking about here today. This is in section 2. It says, "Think then how great your own release will be when you are willing to receive correction for all your problems. You will not keep one, for pain in any form you will not want, and you will see each little hurt resolve before the Holy Spirit's gentle sight. For all of them are little in his sight, and worth no more than just a tiny sigh before they disappear, to be forever undone and unremembered." So again, once we really get what all this is saying, we just don't want to keep any ego thoughts, right? The ego thoughts, they're not fun. and we're really catching on to the whole shebang. And we're ready to step into a more peaceful, happy way of being. And that's what we're doing as we keep practicing this.
So just a little further on, I was reading in chapter 14, the decision for guiltlessness, which is what I just read before. He talks about, continues on a little bit, and he says, this is one of these italicized sections that is kind of saying, pay attention here. What I experience, I will make manifest. If I am guiltless, I have nothing to fear. I choose to testify to my acceptance of the atonement, not to its rejection. So again, if you think of the chart, we're choosing to work with the Holy Spirit, not to work with the ego. With the Holy Spirit, we're recognizing atonement, that we are one with our Father, right? One with our brothers. If I'm choosing ego, I'm choosing that separateness. I'm rejecting the atonement. I would accept my guiltlessness by making it manifest and sharing it. Let me bring peace to God's Son from his Father. And then he goes on, and this is a pretty famous quote out of the Course. Each day, each hour and minute, even each second, you are deciding between the crucifixion and the resurrection, between the ego, left side of the chart, Holy Spirit, on the right side of the chart. The ego is the choice for guilt, the Holy Spirit, the choice for guiltlessness. The power of decision is all that is yours. What you can decide between is fixed, because there are no alternatives except truth and illusion. I go back to the chart again. Truth exists, right? Truth is true. You're quoting that little phrase out of numerous paragraphs before. Truth is true. That's all that exists, right? And then down below that, he says, the joy of learning that darkness has no power over the Son of God is the happy lesson the Holy Spirit teaches, would have you teach with him. So now the happy learner is becoming a teacher. Jesus tells us. We're always teaching, right? We're either teaching from the left side of Ken's chart or the right side. We're teaching with the ego, if that's what we decided to manifest. Or we're teaching with the Holy Spirit, if that's what we like to do. And the way to teach this simple lesson is merely this. Guiltlessness is invulnerability. Therefore, make your invulnerability manifest to everyone. So what's that saying? Invulnerability. It's saying I can't be attacked, right? I'm invulnerable. I cannot be attacked by my brother. If I've got a story where I am the victim in the story, I have already chosen to be with the ego. And as Ken Wapnick puts in one of his audio CDs that I have, that's the bottom rung of the ladder, right? Victimhood. The story I've got that somebody has done something to me, and that I'm suffering from it because of it. So, again, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, and then over in the there's a wonderful section in chapter 17 called the two pictures, and I'm not going to get into all the gory parts of it, but right at the very beginning of it, this is what he said. God established his relationship with you to make you happy. And nothing you do that does not share his purpose can be real. So once again, we're getting back to this, we're getting back to Ken's chart, this understanding that this left side of this picture that Ken put together for us is absolutely meaningless. We cannot, in truth, be there. In truth, we can only be, we are just spirit. We are one with our Father. Right? So all this, if you think of your lives, everybody just think of their individual lives and all the time we've spent in some kind of confusion or unhappiness or distortion or fear, right? Or projecting guilt onto somebody else. All these different things we do, and it's all here in some way, shape, or form. Terror is real, battleground, victimization, kill or be killed. I mean, you pick the words out of here, it's pretty gruesome. This ego projection is pretty gruesome.
The right side, you were just talking about the left side. When do we go on the right side?
When we ask Holy Spirit to show us the truth instead of having chosen this. So when I find myself in scarcity, I find myself in sin, guilt, fear, separation, any of these words that are kind of on here, the battleground, these different descriptive ways we have of talking about the ego thought system. When I find myself in that and I say to Holy Spirit, help me see this differently, that's when I'm with the other side. That's the moment that Jesus talks about when he says it's the, just trying to total blank here. Jump in, it's the...
Holy instant?
The what? Holy instant, thank you. Yeah, I was drawing total blank. Yeah, the holy instant is that moment when the Son of God has says to himself, I want to work with Holy Spirit. I want to see this from Holy Spirit's perspective. That's what it is. It's recognizing, wait a minute, what I've created here is not true. It's not real. It's meaningless. Help me see it differently. It's that simple. I didn't sin. I'm not guilty. Nobody's going to get punished. All I did was choose that left side. And now I can choose to go to Holy Spirit, right? And say, whatever this story is. It could be a big story, a little story, a moment of doubt, a moment of rejection, a moment of guilt projection, anything. It doesn't make a difference.
And what's the difference between the right side and the top?
This is still happening in separation. So I still believe that, that I need to be shown something. There's no showing anything up here. There's just an experience in heaven. Just an experience of oneness, an experience of that joy, experience of that love. We can't describe it, can't put words to it. Over here, I could see a distinction, right? There is no distinction in heaven. There is nothing separate. There is nothing but that, experience of God. So that's a true distinction. So the concept of the Holy Spirit that I'm going to down here in this part of Ken's picture, even the concept of the Holy Spirit doesn't exist in heaven. You don't need a teacher to go to in heaven. You are in knowledge. You are in complete knowledge. Such a wonderful word. I love that. That he put that up there. The recognition. When you know something, you know it. You don't have, you're in it. You are of it, right? Yeah, you don't have to be thinking about it.
Fred, the question you're asking is, what puts us in that green side, that see that dot right there? That's the decision making.
Yeah.
So that's when that dot is having thoughts of unity on the right and separation on the left. It's a choice.
Yeah, this is the wrong-minded thinking and sanity. Here he's got right-minded sanity, but he also says memory of God. The recognition that the Holy Spirit is something inside all of us. We think of the Holy Spirit as something separate from us. It's the memory of God within inside all of us. It's the answer to the decision maker's dream, right? What if I'm separate? What if I'm separate from my Father? And the immediate answer was, you're not. Don't forget. Well, we decided to forget. Every time we choose the ego, we're choosing to forget. But in truth, we can't forget, because in truth, we are the Son of God.
Yeah, I also like the concept that our right to be right-minded or to forgive. I think this is also a Ken quote. Is to look at the ego, to look at the wrong-minded part of us without judgment. So it's to notice the ego, to notice the desire for guilt and judgment, but then to not judge ourselves for having that thought or that feeling, whether that's in ourselves or in someone else. It's really about undoing our condemnation. So if we ever notice that we're condemning anyone, we're saying again that they're bad or they're wrong or in any way, and instead of doing that, we just witness. That is a miracle, because that's recalling the projection of that guilt that we had put onto that person or onto ourselves even, and realizing that it's not the truth. So, yeah, and this connection between the right-mindedness and the one-mindedness, Jesus talks about this throughout the Course too, which is that right-mindedness leads to one-mindedness. So we're not expected to get to one-mindedness, just in one experience of forgiving, although we might. But accumulatively over time, as we keep practicing this, we do step more and more into the one-mindedness. And in fact, the one-mindedness is not even the goal of the Course, right? The goal of the Course is to get us in the place that Jesus calls the happy dream, right? To be the happy learner in the happy dream. It sounds very happy. But that state of being basically means that we're not choosing the ego anymore. And once we get to that point, that Jesus basically says God takes the last step, right? So that last step into our experience of oneness isn't something that we necessarily consciously choose. It's just when we're ready. It's when we're completely ready to open up into that experience of love. Then we go ahead and just let that experience wash over us, and that is our awakening that we're all moving to. So all of this really adds up, one after the next. So yeah, really good questions here. So yeah, do you have something, Charlie?
Yeah, just one last thing. I was just thinking as you were, and again, I love the serendipitous, whatever it is, of this. But I opened the book to the section called "The Little Hindrance," and this is such a great section. It says a little hindrance can seem large indeed to those who do not understand that miracles are all the same. Yet teaching that is what this course is for. This is its only purpose, for only that is all there is to learn. You can learn it in many different ways. All learning is a help or hindrance to the gate of heaven. Nothing in between is possible. So if we want to work with the Holy Spirit, we're going to be learning, as Barret's just touching on, we're going to be learning about light and love, and we're going to keep learning because we've got a lot of learning to do. We've got a lot of unlearning to do on the other side, right? We have things to unlearn, but we have to recognize that this is nothing more than a little hindrance. That's all it really is. We make it this huge, big deal, right? We battling the ego and we fighting the ego, and it's simply a choice that we made. It's just this little hindrance, right? This little block we put up in the way. Right? Little, as Jesus talks about the veil, right? Pulling a veil across our vision, believing that everything going on inside our little earthen berm is real. And it says, think not. Let's see. Yeah. Nothing is ever lost but time, which in the end is meaningless. For it is but a little hindrance to eternity, quite meaningless to the real teacher of the world. Yet since you do believe in it, why would you waste it going nowhere when it can be used to reach a goal as high as learning can achieve? Think not the way to heaven's gate is difficult at all. Nothing you undertake with certain purpose and high resolve and happy confidence, holding your brother's hand and keeping step to heaven's song, is difficult to do. But it is hard indeed to wander off, alone and miserable, down a road that leads to nothing and that has no purpose. And that's the choice we make, right? That's the choice we're constantly confronting ourselves. That we seemingly have two ways to go. In truth, we don't. The truth is true. It's not really happening. But we have set it up when we think it's true. Barret pointed out that, one of the great moments of enlightenment of my life, this little arrow is nothing more than a belief system, right? And that's all it is. It's just a belief system. It's something we created in the mind of the Son of God. And the mind of the Son of God is saying it's real. It's wrong-minded thinking, and yet we believe it. It's the reason I'm standing here in this body, because I somehow believe it. But I've been introduced to another teacher, right? That teacher has always been there. The Holy Spirit has always been there. I've always been able to choose to work with Holy Spirit, to see through Holy Spirit's eyes. It's always been a part of it. I just didn't know it. I didn't know it could turn that way. And so as Barret was touching on it, it's a progression for us in this illusion to keep choosing it over and over and over again. Work with Holy Spirit, choose to work with Holy Spirit. And it does create an experience of being a happy learner. And that, again, that's what we kind of want to get at today, is that, this idea of being a happy learner, this is not a drag doing this, This is real enjoyment, at least in my life. It's really an enjoyment to work with this on a daily basis, To wake up in the morning, and I copied a little phrase out of one Barret touched earlier on about Gary Renard. And so one of the masters that came to him was named Persa, and Persa gave him this message one day. And let me see if I don't know if I brought it with me. Basically, it's this. Persa said, at the start of your day, just say, Holy Spirit, please direct. Holy Spirit, you be in charge of my thoughts and actions today. Is it? Holy Spirit, you be in charge of my thoughts and actions today. Not this crazy thing, not this idea of the separated Charlie. I catch myself all day long hanging out with the separated Charlie, right? But I don't beat myself up about it. It's okay. I just made a choice. And in the next breath, the very next breath, I can be with Holy Spirit. I can make that choice. I can flip back to seeing correctly.
Beautiful. Well, I know around this time, each time we do our good news, we do. We've already had some good questions and sharing, but we just open the floor to more questions and sharing. I'm gonna even unmute our online guests so that if anyone wants to share from our online group, we can do that too. So.
I have something to share.
Really? Yes.
Well, so one of the things I love about the course is it gives us this tool of an observer self, of teaching us how to observe, whether we're dipped into ego thinking or dipped into or present with Holy Spirit thinking. And so I had because it's like any tool, when you use it over and over again, as the course encourages us to do, I find that I notice more quickly when I move to the red side of the part there. So yesterday, when when we went out with our daughter. And there was this, I was at a window seat, and across the aisle was a gentleman was sitting who had a funny little paddle on the end of a stick, and he hit himself with this paddle for 4 hours straight. And then he would take like a 10-second break and say, oh, great, he stopped. Then it goes back again. And it was about this loud. And so after about 3 hours, I was ready to kill the guy. I couldn't believe how I built this picture. I can't believe he's so rude. How could he do that? I asked him, you're not driving me crazy. Vic hadn't even heard it. He was getting closer to the guy than I was. And so honestly, I began to think, I can't stand it. I'm going to have to get up and go tell that guy to stop doing that. This is this slapping business. And so, and then my observer self took me to woman arrested after accosting passenger. So I said, okay. Let's see. There has to be a different way to look at this. So I just, just automatically, and it was humorous to me that I found myself humorous that I was so upset at this guy. Literally, I was ready to take the thing and whack him as many times as he could whack himself. But so
Was there anybody sitting next to him?
no, he was all by himself. And he was sitting like in the middle seat, and there was nobody on either side of him. And so, anyway, so the image I got when I said, well, maybe there's another way to look at this. This is what the force event things do. And so the image I got was, okay, whatever he's doing there, I had figured out that it was a version of tapping, which is a healing kind of a thing. And so, not self-flagellation. You could tell he was trying to help himself. So I decided, okay, the way to look at this is whatever he's doing for himself can also help me. And I'm going to look at it from that point of view. That each one of those slaps is actually whatever that's helping his body do is also helping my body because I'm hearing the slap. So anyway, ta-da! To fix the problem just from this.
What do you think would have happened if you asked him to stop?
Oh, it would have been a confrontation. It really would have. He would have done. And he was a lovely man. It wasn't like he was, anything mean about it or anything. No, it would have been a confrontation, I think. And first of all, it wasn't going to stand up. I think my seatbelt lights were on. So I think he would just have gotten involved, and it would have gotten loud, and it would not have gone down well.
But there must be times when we do stand up and say, this is offending me.
Well, that's a good point. So I had already asked Vic, hey, is this driving you crazy? He didn't even hear it. He said, what are you talking about? So it was clear to me in this particular situation that it was only me, that he was doing something he was trying to help himself somehow. He wasn't doing it to aggravate people. So I'm not advocating never standing up for ourselves. It's a situation by situation. If it had been a mother abusing a little child, that would have been a different story for me. Then I would have felt necessary to do something. But in this case, it seemed like, okay, this is the way to look at this. But definitely there's times it can tell you that I'm let you know if he's doing something that's offending me.
I was thinking I could be the whacker.
You were gonna
I would be the whacker in real life.
oh, yeah.
The question is, would Vic have noticed if you had gone into confrontation?
Yes, I noticed that. But I definitely, it's not like I'm a doormat, but I definitely see in this case a logical and helpful choice was to look at to make it benefit.
Recently I had a birthday of 75. Somebody gave me a card with 90 on it. I called him an asshole. I still feel bad about it. I don't
Although I'm making you, did you mean it somewhat humorously?
but I meant it half serious, half humorous. And he was a friend of mine.
I think that
He was.
you. You
What?
did it on purpose.
I know, but how do you respond? How do I respond? Just let it go? I don't know.
Is he older?
A few years older than me.
Yeah. So it'd make him what, 90, 93, 94?
Yeah, we did have a few drinks.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary.
Anyway,
Yeah, and you know, these are great examples, right? These real life situations where the ego jumps in, right? And we know the other person is wrong, right? But what we're learning from this practice of forgiveness is it really doesn't matter what the specifics of the circumstance are. Our lack of peace is not because of that situation. And again, that seems radical, right? Because it sure looks like it's the other person doing that thing or saying that thing that's setting me off, and everyone would agree, right? Or at least a lot of people. I could get a whole bunch of people on my side, but none of that really matters either, because you're the one experiencing the lack of peace. And you know, as soon as we find ourselves in the situation, then we have the opportunity to step through these steps of forgiveness again. As we've already touched on, the first one is to recall the projection, right? That person, the situation seems to be the cause of my upset, but in truth, the upset is within me. So then when I go to the second step, I realize, well, not only is the upset not out there, but it's not really in me either. Right? Because there is no cause for upset, because there is no cause for suffering, not in truth, right? Not when we go above that blue line back up to heaven. All of the stories fall away, and the peace is real. And again, that third step that Charlie so beautifully shares again and again is to ask Holy Spirit, right? Ask Holy Spirit or Jesus to help us to see this situation with eyes of love. And it really sounds like, you know, you did that, Marilee, in the situation, which helped you to shift out of these attack thoughts that were going on in you, and such a relief. It also reminds me of a story of Helen Schuckman, because sometime I think around the scribing of the course or during the scribing of the course, she had a situation in her life which was really upsetting. Which, you know, she lived in an apartment in New York City, and you know, she had an upstairs neighbor, and this upstairs neighbor walked around on the hardwood floor in their shoes or high-heeled shoes or whatever, right? So she's always hearing these footsteps above her, and it was driving her crazy. And you know, she started to try to do her best with some of these ideas, and what was given to her was this image, and the image was that there was a cord from the top of her head up to this woman's feet, and every time this woman would step, you know, it would affect her. So in her mind's eye, she saw herself cutting the cord from her head up to the feet, and after that experience, it just didn't bother her anymore. I mean, nothing really changed outwardly, but her whole experience was very different.
Great.
There must be a joke coming up here.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right.
we're waiting, Barret. We're just waiting.
Vic, hey, Vic is very intuitive. So, all right. Let's see how many groans I get for these last two I have. So, so why don't pirates take a shower before they walk the plank? Because they just wash up on shore.
Ooh. Fred said, ooh.
All right, we got one more. They all laughed when I told them that one day I would discover the secrets of invisibility. If only they could see me now.
I guess I want to ask, I would assume in some situations it's okay to speak up a little bit.
Yeah, I think the trick in all of this for us is to do it with love. You know, so if I'm doing it in attack, right? I'm doing it from the ego's perspective. or I'm attacking my brother, then I'm not going to be at peace, right? But if I can speak up to my brother in love and recognize that everything going on is either an expression of love or a call for love, well, then I can take the attack out of it, right? If I recognize my brother's, whatever this story is that I've got going on about it is really a call for love, I can come back to him with love instead of attack. I don't need to be hurt in any way. There's somebody that I'm meeting with on a regular basis right now.
Whether we have a coach for passenger with love.
Sure. Yeah. And did in her mind.
I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could have.
Yeah.
I think it was, the reason I didn't was I could see he was trying to help himself with this happening. And I think I got that piece that, okay, it's not like he's doing that for your thing. He's tapping is helping some physical ailment that he has or something. So I think that's why I was like, okay, I think all I really need is to restore my own peace, because that's what I was doing, my peace.
Right.
And so it wasn't even that I was trying to go for love or any of that. It's just that I want to kind of do something.
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't going to make me feel more peaceful to ask him to stop doing something that he clearly was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it goes back to that little phrase where Jesus said we're going to choose between the crucifixion and the resurrection, right? So in the attack, that's what we're doing. We're just crucifying our brother, right? In the resurrection,
Sometimes I go to the library
Mhm.
and use the computer. And in this computer area, there's one fellow all the time that's either pounding on the keys or rocking back and forth and creating quite a disturbance. It's obvious that there's some either mental or physical problem there.
Yeah.
So I really haven't said anything to
Yeah.
him, but yet I'm aware of his condition.
Right. Right. So, but I mean, that's kind of what we can do when we see ourselves getting ready to, when we feel attacked, we're the victim, right? We feel like we're a victim of something going on, is to recognize that it's our movie. And we're really just presenting this to ourselves to learn that lesson. I'm choosing a lesson of victimhood. That's my wrong-minded thinking. If I'm in my right-minded thinking and I'm working with Holy Spirit, I'm not going to be attacking my brother. I'm going to recognize maybe that there's, as Mary Lee did, the clarity came to where he's working on healing himself. How can you attack somebody that's healing themselves or somebody that's having a problem?
I don't think he could stop doing
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why would you attack him? Yeah.
It's a physical disability of something.
So see, you, each time you've got a library, you've already made that decision for yourself, a loving decision. This guy can't help himself.
Right.
Yeah.
So it won't do, it's not helpful.
It wouldn't do any good for me to coach him.
No. Yeah.
And he's only about 30 years old, but there's obviously something that's not
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Because he's bouncing all over that computer, either for the music or whatever he wants.
But we can always find, that's always the warning bell for us, right? Are we at peace or not? Right? I'm not at peace. I'm over here with the wrong-minded thing. There's no peace over that side. Peace exists with Holy Spirit. Right? And that's, again, this concept of being the happy learner. I'm not happy when I'm not at peace. Right? I'm not learning anything except from the ego. I'm learning my brother is wrong. I'm learning my brother is, I'm justified in attacking him. Those are the lessons the ego is teaching me. But if I'm with Holy Spirit, I'm learning that it's simply a call for love. That's what's going on. You don't attack somebody that's calling for love, right? Somebody's going, love me, open arms. Really? You picture it? That's really what's going on. I love that old thing Maureen Muldoon showed me one time. When you're attacked, the first thing you do is defend yourself, right? You want to protect yourself. And the second thing you do is counterattack, right? You go back at them. But does anybody ever just be in love? Just accept, love your brother. We don't do it, we want to go to counterattack. We want to get back at them. We want to prove them wrong. We want to believe in separation rather than oneness.
And like,
Yeah.
if we need to say something because it's the right thing to do, we can do it from a loving point of view.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of surprised when you said there would have been a confrontation, because I'm not sure that's the truth, and especially if you come at the thing with love.
Well, there would have been a confrontation because I was fully in my ego when I was ready to strangle.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean, yeah. Yeah, I got you.
It was dangerous for me to go up.
I understand. Okay.
Ego.
Yeah.
That's why I had to.
Having already decided to be there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was already a victim.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. I was so fully in the red.
Yes, so fully invested.
That's why I had to say, okay, is there another way to look at that?
Yeah.
The green side.
Right.
Or there is another way to look at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Instead of,
Yeah.
And that's, just to bounce off what you were sharing a little bit, Charlie, this idea that really everyone in every situation is saying, love me, right? It's all a call for love. So, in this flight, this gentleman was basically saying, love me. And in the library, as you're sharing, Fred, this other person is saying, love me. What we can actually extrapolate that to everyone in our lives, that everyone in our lives at all times is saying, love me. Sometimes they are saying, love me with words that are loving and kind. They're being caring and compassionate. It's usually pretty easy to hear this request for love in that moment. But oftentimes people are saying, love me with words of anger, with even physically violent or upsetting things. And it's much, much harder most of the time for us to hear the underlying message of love, calling for love in those circumstances. But it is there. And it's actually the only reason we're not always hearing that is because we don't want to always hear it. And again, this is not easy to really acknowledge, not really easy to see. But the more we really get this, the more that this forgiveness practice extrapolates to everything in our lives. And that's really the purpose. In the introduction to the workbook lessons, Jesus talks about it's the practice of these lessons that makes them, real, that shows you their value. And a part of their value is that you continue to extrapolate them to every circumstance that you find yourself in. And again, oftentimes as we start practicing this, we start to see there are certain ways that we use these ideas in our life. Oh yeah, that really worked. I had this big relief and this big release of fear when I practiced forgiveness in this one situation. But then we look at this other part of our life and no way, we're entrenched in victimhood in that situation. And we don't want to give up our painful outfit that we're wearing, this painful role that we're in. But eventually the forgiveness is going to expand and it's going to cover all of these areas. It's going to, be like a gentle blanket of peace. It covers all the fear and all the upset. And it helps us to see really clearly that everyone is always asking for love. And as we get this more and more, all we respond with is love, right? So when we have these flare-ups, when we have these things come into our life where our first impulse is irritation, upset, anger, we just get better and better at not letting that experience drag on. So maybe it lasts a few hours, but in the past, maybe it would have lasted a few days or a few weeks. So we're getting these periods to be shorter and shorter until eventually they're just like an instant. The anger comes, you're like, no, I don't think I want to go there. And we just release it and we come back into our peace. So this is why we keep practicing this, because the results of this are what we really are looking for. And because the results of this is an experience of peace in each and every circumstance that comes our way. So definitely not always easy, but this is our goal. This is where we are going.
Peace over fear. Huh?
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? We have someone online. Trish, anything you want to share?
Gosh, I was just thinking about that. I always appreciate it when you talk about recalling the projection as part of the forgiveness process. And that was something that I had experienced in a deeper way. And then and sometimes these things, I don't know if they get lost, but, it's just helpful to hear it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And with all the politics of today being so divisive and so strong, I think one way to extrapolate this for me is in the world of politics, because I still can get triggered.
Yeah.
So thank you, because Charlie was saying, we're not really, the past doesn't exist, so we're not really in this world of politics. We're not really in this world. It's just, anyway, I really appreciate the good news with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joining
That's
us.
good affirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just to kind of weave a little of what you're sharing here, Trish, in with what Fred said, is that it's even okay for us to be active in politics. But as Charlie said, can we do that from a place of love? Can we do that from a place of kindness and peace? We can stand up, again, like we're talking about, should we stand up? Should we speak up for ourselves? So we can be involved in the political scene with love, and we can be writing letters to Congress. We can making calls to our we can even be running for office and really being deeply participating in these systems. But the question is, what is it for? Are we using it to strengthen our ego self, or are we using it to really be a channel for love? And so I think that's really helpful, because I think sometimes there can be a tendency in some spiritual circles to kind of just withdraw
Exactly.
from the world,
Yeah.
withdraw from politics. Oh, that's the world, But it's not wrong to engage in the world. It just is all about, who are we doing it with? Am I doing all of this with the ego as my ally, or am I doing all of this holding Jesus's hand and remembering that it's all for my awakening? And that really is what makes the difference.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is a struggle for me at times, because I was very politically oriented when I was younger, and now I've sort of worked myself into neutrality and I know it annoys my family a little bit that I'm not, more verbal. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And my outrage. I mean, I do feel outraged, but it's a struggle, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Trish.
Yeah, that's an interesting area. I find myself sometimes turning on the TV to get the news, but I lead into it with, what's he done today?
Yeah.
So I've already walked into this, hitting the button so I have a picture to project the guilt on, right? So what I want to do is catch myself doing that, and be able to, because of this whole concept of being the happy learner, is laugh at myself. There I go again. The same thing you did yesterday, Charlie, when you turned the news on. You do it to project guilt. Well, that's what I want to learn. I want to learn that I'm doing that. And how can I not do that, right? I want to go to Holy Spirit, as Jesus tells us over and over again, and be able to say, help me see this differently.
What do you do when you're projecting guilt?
Well, what I'm saying is, I'm turning the TV on to see what the president has done, because I know he's going to be guilty of something. Right? I've got a story of separation going on. There's two of us here. There's me who thinks one way, and there's him that thinks another way, and he's a guilty son of a bitch for what he's doing. That's my story. That's my ego story. The truth is, we are one. So I want to be able to see from that. I want to be able to see, this is a manifestation of who the Son of God thinks he is. This is just my movie going on here. Right? So we've created, the Son of God has created this story of duality, the story of separation, divisiveness, right? And we're buying into this. And again, it's getting back to this decision maker.
You're saying he's guilty.
That's my story.
Does that mean that you're guilty?
Yes. Yep, I'm guilty for thinking that, because the Son of God is not guilty. Right? So he's guilty, I'm guilty. He's not guilty, neither am I. Is he innocent? So am I. Right? But if I'm going to tell myself a story of guilt and project that onto him, I'm just doing it to myself as well. I'm saying, yes, the separation is real. Duality is real. Right? What I want to go is Holy Spirit and say, help me see this in oneness. not into it.
From a point of innocence.
That's what I'm working on. Yes. Am I good at it? Not when I go turn the TV on, having already decided he's guilty.
I think it is easy for those who use the term call for love.
Yeah. Yes,
For me,
exactly.
Instead of guilty.
Yeah, this is a call for love, exactly. Yeah, but if I turn the TV on, already geared, already in the wrong-minded thinking that this is, I'm going to do this to find out what he did today. What's he guilty of today? You know, that's a choice I made.
And that's Charlie's call for love.
That's my call for love. Yeah, as well. Right, exactly. So Holy Spirit, help me see this differently. Yeah. And I get to practice this over and over again because it's a good chance next time he pops up, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to project guilt on him again. So it's but the great thing about this is, which I was touching on earlier, was I don't have to feel bad about this, right? It's the lesson I need to learn. And it keeps,
grateful.
yes, I can go to gratitude for it because thank you for letting me see, right, that I'm doing this. Because the old Charlie would have turned it on and just spent hours in front of the screen, for throwing things at the screen or doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So it's a world of difference, it really is. It's not that I don't see, I see the stuff going on. I'm not ignoring it. The other thing is to just never turn the TV on. No, I turn the TV on and it's there. And, I get to listen to the talking heads all do their guilt projection, and I can buy into it or not. So, yeah, it's fun. It's actually fun when you look at it. It's like, wow, there I go again.
Yeah.
Got some work to do, Charles.
Well, this world is the perfect opportunity, right? This world is the perfect classroom for all of us. So whether it's politics or our personal relationships, bodily issues, money issues,
Bodily issues.
Whatever it is, this is the perfect classroom for us. Yeah. And this is the good news, again, like Charlie says, we can actually start to have a little bit of fun with it because we realize that we're not the victim of the world I see. So I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. I was going to read a poem, unless you had something else you wanted to share here, Charlie.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I just, I'm ready to go to gratitude.
All right. All right. So this is one of Helen's poems from the collection Gifts of God. And the poem is called Access. Salvation is as plain as open day. Its unambiguous simplicity is far beyond distortion or misuse. It cannot be betrayed nor reconciled with error and attack. It never fails in its forgiving gentleness. It stands like to a mother holding out her arms to tired children, asking them to come and rest in her protection. Do not think the darkness in your heart has banished you from the eternal home your Father set among the stars for you. What you betrayed was never there to suffer from the hurts you thought you gave. And all the things you stole were glittering illusions. All your thoughts of murder and abuse, of death and pain, of sickness, loss, and misery were but the dreams of fever. Holy Son of God, your innocence is unassailable because of what you are. Salvation states the simple truth. The Son of God is free because he is as God would have him be.
Sweet. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. Trish, thanks for joining us.
Yep. Great being with you all. So our next good news will be on Saturday, December 7th at the Space, and I will be there in the physical form. So I'll be with you guys all.
In the flesh.
And then Charlie and I are going to be leading a Course in Miracles retreat in Wisconsin, in Racine, just a little bit north of the border. at a place called Sienna Retreat Center on January 4th and 5th. So it's an overnight retreat. They have lodging there, meals are included. If you want more information, you can talk to Charlie afterwards, or you can go to my website, which is miraclesu.org. That's the word miracles, letter u.org. And just click under events and you'll find it there. So yeah, it was really beautiful being with everyone today, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks. Thanks, Barret, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Barret.
All right. Love you.
Yeah, he'll be back in town in a couple of weeks, right, Pete? For 3 months?
Yeah, for 3 months again, I'll be back in the States. So.
But he'll be above the cheese curtain.
Oh, he's not in Milwaukee.
Yeah.